The call to order the Village of Lake Bluff Finance Committee meeting um, on October 19th, 2020. And the first item of business is the oral declaration declaring the in-person meetings of subsidiary boards and commissions. Pursuant to recently adopted amendments to the Illinois Open Meetings Act, included in Public Act 101-0640, public bodies may in certain circumstances hold entirely virtual public meetings without a quorum physically present at any one location. On March 18, 2020, the village president issued a declaration of emergency pursuant to the authority granted by the Village Code, the Illinois Municipal Code, and the Illinois Emergency Management Agency Act to address the health issues proposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. On May 29, 2020, Governor Pritzker issued a disaster proclamation that declared in-person attendance at public meetings of more than 10 people at a regular public meeting location to be infeasible in accordance with the Illinois Open Meetings Act as a Public Act 01-0640. On June 16, 2020, President O'Hara executed a written determination that given the ongoing emergency associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, in-person meetings of the village board are not practical or prudent at this time until further notice. In accordance with the governor's disaster proclamation and the village president's declaration of emergency and determination regarding meetings of the village board, I, as the chair of the Finance Committee of the Village of Lake Bluff, hereby determine that in-person meetings of the Village of Lake Bluff Finance Committee are not practical or prudent at this time and until further notice. Okay, the next order of business is the roll call. May I have a roll call, please?
I will handle that. So, Member Meyer?
Present.
Member Toll is absent. Chair Inkeman?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Just made it. Next order of business would be the approval of the minutes from the last Finance Committee meeting dated September 28th, 2020. And do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second that. And there were some minor updates that village staff made to the minutes, and I think that was distributed. And I don't think any of those were, substantive, meaning changing the overall nature of what was being communicated, just kind of some minor corrections. So all in favor?
Aye.
Well, I'll do a quick roll call if that's all right, Chair.
Oh, I forgot. That's right.
That's right.
Thank you.
Member Meyer?
Aye.
Chair Inkeman?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you for keeping me in line there. Okay, at this time, we allow 15 minutes for any individuals who would like the opportunity to address the Finance Committee on any matter that is not listed on the agenda. Glenn or Drew, do you see anyone online who would like to speak?
There's no one present in Village Hall, and it doesn't appear any extra attendees on the call.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the first order of business is a discussion regarding the draft FY 2020 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, lovingly called the CAFR. And Bettina, do you want to kind of usher in our auditors?
Sure. Just to give a couple brief highlights, and then I'll let Dan Berg from the auditing firm of Sikich take over and give you some more details. The village obtained the highest opinion, which is an unmodified opinion from the auditing firm Sikich. The village's total net position increased from $25.373 million to $25.827 million as of April 30th, 2020. The general fund, the village's main operating fund, ended the year with a fund balance of $7.8 million, which increased from $6.85 million as of April 30th, 2020. And the balance represents about 84% of the operating expenditures, which does exceed the village's 50% operating expenditure policy. However, as you may recall, this is chiefly due to the changes that were made at year end and in reversing the interfund transfers. And those decisions were made through the Finance Committee and the Board to prepare for potential revenue downturns with regards to the COVID health pandemic. And it is the intent that those excess reserves would provide relief to any revenue losses in future future fiscal years. So having said that, Dan, I'll let you take over. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yep, as discussed earlier today with you. So I do want to point out as well that the entire audit was done remote. Our company has been not being on site for most of our audits, if showing up at all. And so the village and the library's audits were done online, literally, the entire 100% of the audit, including this meeting, which wraps it up for us. Our preliminary field work was done in mid-May, and our final field work was done right after the 4th of July, from July 6th to the 17th. This comprehensive annual financial report is ready to be submitted to the GFOA, and we believe it will receive the same certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting that it hasn't for many years in the past. So to that end, it includes a transmittal letter and an MD&A and a statistical section. And I would encourage you all to take a look at those to familiarize yourself with the financial statements, especially the management discussion and analysis, which compares last year's to this year's and lets the management of the village explain why things change from one year to another. I did want to talk a little bit about the deficit in the governmental activities of 2.6 million. That went up about $1.5 million from the prior year. And the reason for that is that the village used current resources to increase its capital assets by about $1.6 million net of depreciation and debt. So because that went up so much, the unrestricted went down by a similar amount. And in addition, the restricted net assets went up by about $200,000, and almost all of that was due to the lack of expenditures in MFT. So that was one thing I wanted to point out. Another thing I wanted to point out is that the police pension fund, the actuarial report was measured as of April 30, which, as you all know, was not a great day to be measuring your market value in your investments. And therefore, the net pension liability went up substantially from the same time last year, which April 30, 2019 was a very good time to be measuring market value of assets. Likewise, the IMRF was measured as of 12/31/19. Again, a very good time to be measuring your market value of assets. So that liability went down substantially. It's not enough to counter the pension increase, but down nonetheless. So we had a couple of things working against us to increase the deficit position of the governmental unrestricted net position. Those did not have an effect on the general fund because those measurements and those impacts are only at the full accrual government-wide financial statement level on pages 4 and 5 of the CAFR. Pretty much the highlights that I wanted to cover. I did want to thank staff for their work in getting ready for the audit. We did have Marlene leave during or shortly after the audit, so the wrap up, that a lot of that, the final questions and whatnot that went to the assistant fell to Bettina. And so we had, we're a little bit later in delivering this report than we have been in the past. But we're still well within the deadline that imposed by the state of Illinois. So we're happy to have that done this month. So congratulations and thank you, Bettina.
Thanks, Dan.
I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the CAFR or about the board communication that we sent.
Sure. Chair Ankerman, if I may, I have a few questions.
Please.
And first off, Dan, thank you for all of your hard work, of course. This audit being done online, I just wanted to make sure that you are confident that despite that online nature of the audit, that you've identified and eliminated any susceptibilities that we might have to, issues you'd identify if you were in person, and, issues of defalcation or others. I've never done an audit, but I just wanted to make sure you're comfortable with the fact that this got done in such an unusual way this year.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we did was, well, first of all, we didn't cut any procedures as a result. We were able to share screens with staff and verify internal controls were functioning as they were without it, if we were there. So to that end, we were able to do our internal control walkthroughs and testing just as well as if we were there almost. We had sharing a screen is not quite the same as pointing at a screen and talking through it with an individual. But we also looked at all of the invoices that we normally would have, cash receipts that we normally would have, bank recs and bank statements, investment statements in detail. All of that was available to us online and may have been a little more efficient actually being online, simply because of the scanning process. Nothing was on somebody else's desk and not available to us on the day that we asked for. So there were some minor efficiencies that actually worked better, but most of it took a little bit longer than normal, simply because of working through emails as opposed to talking to a person face to face. You might have a better and a quicker response. So
I have one additional comment, if I could, Trustee Myers. So,
Of course.
a couple years back, I gave the auditors access to our software. So whether they were sitting in the building or whether they were in the office, they had full online access to viewing any part of the software just the same way I would or any other employee. That process also gave them access outside of the building, just like our staff did in working remotely.
We had read-only access.
Need for asking questions, right? It eliminated some processes that normally you would have asked us. You could just look yourself.
Absolutely. Going through the general ledger and choosing our samples for expenditure testing and expense testing, accounts payable testing, things of that nature. At the village is also scanning those items. I've had a couple of comments from individual clients suggesting that maybe we're not looking as much as we had in the past, simply because they're not pulling that, but that is as a result of actually scanning things as opposed to anything else. It makes it.
So that to me was just an example of more transparency in the process, just so you're aware.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Very good, thank you. Now, I do have another question, Dan, that's directed really to more of a financial planning question, and I appreciate the prior response. I note on bullet point number 4 of the memo that went to the Finance Committee members and the trustees, that you lay out that we have, of our expenses of $12 million, we're funding them with program revenues of $2.82 million, and then other things from tax and miscellaneous of $9.67. My question is this: is that ratio, where we're running a $2.82 million out of the 12 from program revenues, is that a ratio that is healthy from at least your experience with other with other municipalities? If that's within your within your purview or something that you can comment on. It's really a question for my financial planning purposes.
I don't normally compare the actual program revenue percentage to other municipalities. Each individual municipality has its own unique mix of property tax versus sales tax and other types of taxes, as well as charges for services. the services themselves are not uniform. But on pages 95 and 96 of the CAFR are the change in net position over the last 10 years, and it does show program revenues generally staying below $2 million. And so in that vein, I think that it has been somewhat consistent. The grants themselves, capital grants for the most part, does tend to vary with the village substantially as projects are awarded through the state primarily. So that individual line item does vary significantly one year to the next. But property taxes have been relatively stable over the years as a large contributor to the funding of your expenses.
And Dan, wouldn't you generally say property and sales tax for municipalities are the lion's share of revenue streams to fund all activities?
That's very true. There's only a few exceptions to that rule where and I'm sure they're struggling with those exceptions in the cases of the old brick and mortar malls, that there were a few municipalities like Schaumburg and Carroll Stream that relied very, very heavily on the sales tax generated by those malls. And I'm sure, I don't audit either of those anymore, but I'm sure they're struggling as a result.
I would think
Good. Thank you, Dan.
I would think there'd be a slight variability thinking back to the target development when program revenues might have had a bit of a burp, a bit of an increase. I'm not looking at that 10-year in front of me, but I'm going to guess that period of time we probably saw a bit of an increase.
Yes. 2013, 2014, large capital grants.
So I was going to ask a question, but Regis was waving his hand a minute ago.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mark. My question was actually in continuation to the question from Bill, that was the fact that you were remote to do an audit. Was that the thought I had was an audit is internal processes, including the physical processes within the premises. So having an auditor sitting within a village hall in this case is actually important as well because it's both physical and data bound. So how did you feel this part of your audit?
So certain processes are approved electronically and have been for quite a while within the village's ERP system. So, for instance, purchase and invoice approval, which is a primary control that we look at, have been done electronically by the department heads and by Drew and by quite a while now. Other items like reviewing bank reconciliations have to be done within the system. Some reconciliations are only done in Excel, for instance. Those types of reviews have to be physically documented, as well as some of the journal entries. So we did have a comment about journal entry approval that we'd like to see that beefed up a little bit. But some of the other approvals are built in electronically. So does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is a question to both Dan and Bettina, I guess, to some extent or another. It seemed like that this is the next year or two are bumper crops for changes to financial standards. It seems like in the past we've had maybe 3 or 4, and now we've got like 13 or 14 or something like that. And I guess my question is that correct? And Dan's smiling and nodding his head big time.
Yeah.
The second one would be are we well positioned to accommodate a lot of those, whether, some of those are really esoteric, others like what essentially capitalizing leases and things like that, and how you treat leases as assets rather than non-assets. or something coming out of the other world has probably been doing that for a long time. So are we in a good position for that, Bettina, to roll with those changes?
I think so. I mean, in regards to the example that you gave as far as leases are concerned, we have nominal exposure. I mean, there's some exposure in lease revenue that I assume that we're also going to need, that'll fall into that category. But it's lease expenses, there really aren't any. So
I only singled that one out because
right. No, I know.
I clearly understood it.
Right. No, that's actually a big one. It's going to be a big one for a lot of people, especially as they, lease fleets and there's a whole different way of doing business, and copiers, which we also aren't leasing currently. We purchase them. So I don't know that it'll have a huge net effect on us, that particular one. I don't know, Dan?
That one is the one that's going to affect a great deal, a great many of our clients, especially the ones that have chosen to do fleet leasing recently. And that's kind of a new phenomenon among our clients in the first place. But it is kind of playing catch up with the FASB for profit and not for profit.
Right.
That some of these GASBs are also kind of, if you will, corrections of prior GASBs. So the one that may have an effect on the village going forward, not so much this next audit cycle, is the lease one if the village chooses to fund its vehicles and other things a little bit differently. The other ones I don't think are really going to have a significant effect, but you are 100% right that GASB has been working overtime in producing documents of this nature. It's to keep up with in some ways. But the good news is most of them aren't really affecting smaller municipal entities and special units of government as well. Like
I'm guessing, like you say, if we were a Schaumburg, we mentioned Schaumburg a little bit ago, if we were a Schaumburg where you're leasing a number of working trucks and other pieces of heavy equipment, rather than choosing to purchase those, that could be a lot to accommodate.
Right. Crystal Lake, for example, has begun that process and jumped in with both feet, actually.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Well, I just wanted to, look at a high level in terms of the fund balances, which I know Bettina had mentioned earlier, with our goal being more 50% in general, but our high balances are where we have positioned ourselves so that we can address the ongoing pandemic and the projected shortfall of sales tax revenues. And Bettina, do you have any kind of just feel for how we're doing in terms of, sales tax potentially for the year? I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but just kind of looking at, where we are at this point.
Well, without getting into specific dollar values or percentages, it's almost as if we've missed a quarter. I mean, that whole first quarter, sales tax returns are either late or behind. So for us, overall, you're talking $350,000 or so. And will that revenue come back in later as things catch up and people then have to submit because they were given longer windows of time to make those payments with the state? It's unclear. We'll see.
Right. But given the scope of what you see so far, we're still in a fine position to be able to handle that type of impact to our financial statements.
I believe so. With the changes that we've made in particular, they were pretty proactive, and I think that they more than cover those losses.
Right. Well, everything hit just as our, fiscal year was coming to an end, and so we had to kind of rely on staff to kind of say, how do we want to position things toward the end of this year, looking forward into next year. And I think that, the staff, especially led by Bettina, has done just a fantastic job of giving us options for how we can just move things around so that we have the availability to do what needs to be done. And I appreciate all the hard work that's been put into the preparation of, everything from each financial statement to the MD&A. Um, it's been a lot of work, and I think it's reflected in these statements. So thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions at this point to either Bettina or to Dan Berg? Do I have a motion to accept it? Bill, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I was just nodding my head for no further comments.
Got it. So do I have a motion to accept the CAFR?
And recommend acceptance to the village board?
Recommend acceptance to the village board?
And so moved.
All right, second, and then a roll call, please.
Trustee Meyer?
Aye.
Chair Ankerman?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, so that is all the orders of business. There is an informational item, which Bettina has a brief update on a review of our investments.
Sure.
Thanks, Dan.
But it's more of a informational item. Sorry?
I was just thanking Dan if he was going to bug out on us, if he's got another meeting to go to tonight.
I would like to remind you, if you do have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to take your call or email and would be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate all your help.
Likewise. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Drew. Okay, Bettina?
So with regards to the investments, what I wanted to bring up and bring to your attention was that in September we had a CD that matured. The value of that maturity was over $1 million, and we chose to redeem it. It was $1,023,315, and because the interest rates were so low at 0.1%, that would have been the renewal rate. So those current dollars are sitting in Lake Forest Bank and Trust General Fund, and when you see the monthly finance report, you see those balances in there and the reduction to the investment accounts. And we would like to move those funds to the Schwab Soil Faduto investment account that currently has roughly about $525,000 in it, that was established for these type of movements, and still has full 48-hour liquidity, which is still better than the CD would have had. And the rates of return on that have been significantly higher than what I've seen in any of the CDs that we've renewed recently. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention and let you know.
Could you remind us what the restrictions on investments are for a piece of? We don't have a lot of latitude, as I recall.
No, we don't have a lot of latitude, and I can look up the specific restrictions and give you the policy quotes. I don't know them off the,
But offhand, it's not much. CDs and government bonds and
exactly
things like that, I recall.
Absolutely, yep, that's about it. And the problem with the CDs right now is you're committed and you have no access to the funds, and the rates are so low that it really makes no sense.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Thank you for that update. I appreciate that. And I don't know that we need a motion or anything. It's just an informational item, correct, Drew?
Yeah, we just wanted to let you know that we're keeping with that practice that had been in the direction that the Finance Committee had given staff, I'm going to say a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a year. Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to be upfront about it. That's all, but no formal action necessary.
Thank you. I am trying to locate a note that was given to me about, I think it's in the organizational chart, where I think some of the, if you'll bear with me one moment, that's right. On, it's just page lowercase I for 1 on the Village of Lake Bluff list of the principal officials under the Village Board of Trustees. Just wanted to note that Mark Dewart was listed twice and Regis Charlot was not listed. And I just was notified of that So I don't know if that's something that can be corrected, just to.
Yep.
Please don't do that until after I vote, okay?
Thank you for addressing that, Barbara. Thank you for my notes.
I was frantically trying to find that page number so that I could at least reference it.
Thank
So,
you. We'll get that corrected.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm going back to my agenda here. I think that was it. The last item is an adjournment. So at this point in time, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Roll call.
Aye.
They all said aye. Noted.
Thank you so much. This
Okay.
meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night to
Good evening.
everybody, and
Thanks,
thank
everybody.
you.
Right.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Night.
Right.